It's about time that we take a step back as society and recognize that both sides of the equation when it comes to the body positivity movement are absolute bullshit. We've got fit influencers that have eating disorders and take loads of drugs on this end, promoting that a shredded lifestyle is a great way to live. It's not, it's bullshit. And that the opposite end of the spectrum, we've got morbidly obese people saying that they're healthy and they can have a great quality of life as well. That's bullshit as well. And I have been on both sides of this spectrum here. I've been shredded for bodybuilding purposes, and I've also been obese as well. Both of them suck. Where you find your set point in the middle is your happy zone, but it's up to you, the individual, to make that happen. Today, we're talking all about body positivity on the R.Y.S.E Movement Podcast. So let's get into it. Thank you for being. Welcome to the R.Y.S.E Movement Podcast, a place where legends just like you learn how to raise your standards everywhere. Welcome to another episode of the R.Y.S.E Movement Podcast. I'm Dave, and in this one, like I said in the intro, we're talking all about body positivity on both ends of the equation. So in my Instagrams, I put up a quiz to be able to say what you guys want me to talk about on the podcast for this week, and you guys chose body positivity over fasting and all that kind of crap. We'll cover that at a later date, but let's talk all about body positivity today. So you've got perfect polarity. As always, there is always hot, cold, up, down, fat, shredded, okay? So what we're looking at is both ends of the equation because body positivity is both of those. The idea here is to collapse opposites and find some neutrality for you. You are unique. There is no other human, even if you're an identical twin, there is no other human on this earth that is as unique as you, that is as perfect as you are. However, you have to find your perfect North Star. You need to know what I preach about on the podcast all the fucking time is what you're aiming at needs to be for you. It needs to be your North Star. You need to know exactly what you're aiming at. What is your version of balance? Because like the yin and yang symbol, there is up, there is down, there is hot, there is cold, there is fat, there is shredded. We need to make sure that we're looking at both sides of the equation when it comes to the fitness space, the health and wellness space, because they are perfect polarities of one another. The same thing we've got carnivore and vegan. We've got the both poles of the equation. So we're going to cover both of them. And I've been both of them. I haven't been morbidly obese, but I've been obese pretty recently, pretty much. And I've also been shredded. I've been down somewhere between 6 and 7, 8% body fat, and I competed in bodybuilding a couple of times as well. I've done it using drugs and being natural. I've gotten fat by self-medicating through food, basically, because I found a trigger a couple of weeks ago that was all around. Anytime that I'm in mental or physical pain, I eat, I binge. So there's an interesting thing, there's an interesting correlation behind the psychology behind both of them, because they're both disordered eating patterns, they're both disordered emotional regulation, they're both disordered in the way that they manifest. Majority of people jump into fitness, jump into being shredded and becoming a bodybuilder and all these sorts of things from a place of lack. Majority of the things that we do as humans come from a place of lack. So what we need to look at is what are the things that we need to pay attention to when it comes to someone being in disordered thinking and disordered eating, disordered training, all these sorts of things when it comes to being shredded and trying to be a bodybuilder and lean and athletic and all those sorts of things. And also the other end of the spectrum about being fat, overweight, being obese, and calling a spade a spade. It's you're shredded, you probably have an eating disorder and you probably have some mental dysfunction going on. You're fat, overweight, obese, you've got some disordered thinking and disordered actions going on as well. So we're gonna call a spade on this one. I can talk from authority on this because I've studied nutrition for the last 12, 13 years. I have been a personal trainer and a coach for the last 12 years. I've done bodybuilding as far back as 2010. I've been obese as far back as late 2017 up until 2021, 2022, when I was still about 118 kilos. Then I was just overweight. I'm still not at my best yet. I'm still down at 105 kilos, probably 16, 17% body fat. I know my North Star for happy medium of my body is about 10 to 12% body fat. So that'll put me at about 97, 98 kilos. I'm going to keep pushing until I hit my homeostasis, until I hit my median where I'm happy. I've been between the poles. I've been shredded down at 6, 7% and it's horrible. I've been fat and overweight, it's fucking horrible. Both ends are horrible. You need to find your balance. And I hope me repeating this has gotten into your guys' head to understand that when you swing to each side of the polarity, this comes from the Kabbalion, so the 7 Hermetic principles, the law of cause and effect, the law of as above, so below, the law of, I can't even remember the name of it. Anyway, the laws go, the swing to the left is measured by the swing to the right. And so you're going to oscillate back and forth, up, down, left, right, every single direction, hot, cold, fat, shredded. The thing is, most people, when they get to too far to the end of the spectrum, too far on that polarity, they get stuck there and that becomes their disordered way of life and everything basically happens to them. The same thing that happens when you get over to the shredded side. Everything starts happening to you. You start to get breakdown, you start to lose your erections as a guy, you have no libido as a woman, you lose your period as a woman, there's so many fucking horrible things that happen at both ends of the spectrum. And your body is happiest bang in the middle. But your body's unique. You have to find out what that means for you. Basically, where I want to go with this podcast is I want to read a bunch of things about the obesity epidemic, because we don't have a fucking epidemic of shredded people. We've got an epidemic of bullshit being promoted on social media, absolutely. But we really need to be taking care of our overweight, obese people in Australia and in the world, because there's a lot going on. There's a lot psychologically that's driving this, and there's a lot to be answered for with social media, with the ease and access of modernity, with, Uber Eats and all this kind of stuff. The harder life is, the easier your life will become. The easier you try to make your life, the harder it will become. It's the law of polarity. It's the law of opposites. You need to be balanced in the middle. And in the Hermetic philosophy, in the Three Initiates book, they talk about how the initiates that are the masters of choosing where they sit in a deliberate polarity. They're the ones that don't get oscillation. They're the ones that don't have the swing of the left measured by the swing of the right. They are poised and present and perfect in divine time. Like I said with DeMartini's quote a couple of weeks ago, everything is perfect the moment that you choose from a place of power. And you deliberately polarize yourself and you don't allow the polarization to go back. But that's unique to the masters. And I can guarantee you, everyone out there, including myself, you're not a fucking master yet. You need to keep practicing. You need to keep putting in the work. So let's jump into some statistics. God, that's a bit of a tongue twister. Okay, so I'm on the Australian Institute of Health and Wellness and Welfare. So here we go. 1 in 4 children, 25%, and adolescents aged between 2 to 17 were overweight or obese in 2017 to 18. So this is a 6-year-old study. These statistics, I couldn't find anything else while I was going for a quick Google before I was getting the podcast ready. I can't find anything recently because let me just say that the pandemic fucked everything up. The pandemic threw such a spanner in the works for mankind that there's so many untold ramifications that we won't be able to see for the next probably 10, 15 years. They're going to look back on the last 4 years of history with everything that happened and say this is the dumbest we have ever been. We've been so reactive and we have fucked up so many people's lives, all for the sake of... I'm not going to go there. I can get way too passionate about this. 2 in 3, so 2/3 of adults overweight and obese in 2017 to 18. 36% were overweight but not obese. 31% were obese. That's horrid. Horrid. 2/3 of our population. 2/3 of our population. See what I mean by we don't have an epidemic of really skinny, shredded people? We've got an epidemic of people that are overweight, obese, that have a terrible quality of life. They're probably working their guts out trying to provide a living, the cost of living crisis, all the rest of the things, and they're being absolutely victimized because of their mindset around their weight and around what they're capable of doing or not capable of doing. It's disgusting. Australia had the 9th highest proportion of overweight and obese people aged 15 plus among 21 OECD member countries in 2021. We were 9th. That's horrid. There's 196 countries in the world, and we're 9th. 60% of men, 66% of women in 2017-18 had a waist circumference that indicated high risk of metabolic complications. Horrid, absolutely horrid. Estimates of BMI, so body mass index, based on nationally representative measures, height and weight data from Australian Bureau of Statistics. Due to the pandemic, here we go, physical measurements. We weren't able to do this because self-reporting is inaccurate. So they've covered the data because you couldn't go see a medical professional. That's where, I'm not going to go into that any further. Statistics from the ABS from 2018, 1 in 4 living with obesity, 1.2 million children in Australia. We've got 26 million people in Australia and 1.2 million of the children and adolescents are overweight, if not obese. Ridiculous. Adults, 2/3 obese, overweight. 12.5 million adults. 12.5 million adults. 36% are living with overweight and not obese, 31 are obese, 12% are living with severe obesity, which is a BMI score of 35 or more. Now, if you train weights and you've grown your lean body mass up quite substantially, you're going to be overweight, obese on a BMI scale as it is. At my biggest muscular wise in 2017, I was considered obese even though I was 112, 113 kilos at 12% body fat. Then when I got up to 133 kilos, or at least that's the last time that I stepped on the scales at that weight, I had a BMI of about 34. Yep. So I lost a ton of muscle and I kept putting on body fat. When I was at my fattest, and I'll put up a picture here again for reference, I don't want to keep shoving it in your guys' face, but it's a good reference point. When I was at my fattest, my blood pressure, I was pre-hypertensive. My blood pressure was 165 over 115 or 120. I was a stroke risk. I was a heart attack risk. A personal trainer at that point of 8 years. Personal trainer of 8 years. Someone who's competed in bodybuilding before. Being at risk of a cardiac event because I was so fat. Doesn't really make sense, does it? That's why majority of it's psychological. Majority of what you experience in your life is psychological. There's a saying that comes to success. 80% psychology, 20% is the effort that you put in. And 20% of the effort that you put in will give you 80% of the results. We are such a fat country. We need to make sure, that's probably going to be a funny clip. We are such a fat country. We need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make health and wellness as accessible and easy, to make sure that people are understanding that putting in the effort, putting in the work is going to be the best thing that they can do. Your health and wellness is all that you have. And I don't just mean, not being a fat fucker like I used to be. I mean, your mental health, your emotional health, your psychological health, how much love you have in your life, what your community is like, how well you can communicate your needs, how well your needs are reciprocated from those around you, how well society can be able to create infrastructure to promote health and wellness Australia-wide. These things are so damn important. And a lot of the time, people feel like they're failed, because I definitely feel like I've been failed by society, but it's also my responsibility. It's a catch-22. It's both sides of the equation again. It's individuals and also the societal community around. It's not one or the other. Majority of the time when it comes to politics, the right's like, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, get on with it, no one's coming to save you sort of thing. And yes, that's 100% true. But at the same time, we live in God, I hate this saying, we live in a society, but that's also true. We live in a community where it's the infrastructure and the societal things that we've created, especially in Australia being so much of a socialized country. The average Australian pays over 32% tax, and that goes towards roads, fireys, police, ambos, hospitals, the stupid government structures that we've got and all the bureaucracies that's inside of that. But we've got such a sick care model because of people like this, because we have so much disease, obesity, illness, all these sorts of things are happening because we've got this beautiful modern society which makes it amazing, and we've got these societal structures that are overpowering and over supporting people that aren't having enough challenge, like the people on the right side of politics. When you look at it this way, we all need to be coming from the middle. We need to be having conversations around what's on the fringe, except I can't even say this on socials, but fuck the Yahtzees, and then fuck Antifa too. But fuck, this is a bit of an unhinged podcast. Anyway, we need to have a conversation from that center line and talk to all ends of the spectrum, and then bring them into a bit of cohesion so that we can be on the straight and narrow path. This is talking a little bit highbrow, and talking, the bigger political realm sort of thing. But Australia needs to unite. We need to unite regardless of race, creed, culture, regardless of illness, whatever's happening. We need to unite as a populace so that we can take Australia forward. And it doesn't just come from the societal structures and the infrastructure that we've got in the government and blah, 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 like all the, big corporations and just mess. It comes from individuals standing up and doing the best that they can in their communities too. I know I do the best inside of my family, inside of my friendship group, inside of my greater network, and I make sure that I create as many ripples as possible, because I know what it's like to feel so helpless. I know what it's like to be overweight. I know what it's like to just feel down and out and just look in the mirror and absolutely fucking hate myself. Let's go back to the statistics. Okay, waist circumference. Based on the latest data available, going back to 2018, 60% men, 66% women aged 18 and over have a waist circumference that is indicated an increased or substantially increased risk of metabolic complications. The proportion of adults with a waist circumference that indicate a substantially increased risk of metabolic complications tends to increase with age, up until about 65 to 74 for men and 75 to 84 for women, because that's the average age that people kick the bucket. Okay, so this is the Obesity Collective. I don't know what they are. They seem to be some kind of organizational body. So we're going to read what is obesity in their version and just tell me what you feel about this. Let me know in the comments what you feel about this. So, weight stigma. The word obesity is loaded with stigma, blame, and shame. The stigma is unfair, a barrier to action, and harmful. Weight stigma or weight bias is the social devaluation, discriminatory actions and beliefs towards individuals due to their weight and size. These beliefs are typically informed by prevailing societal norms about acceptable body sizes and shapes and perpetuated by media. The stigma associated with obesity arises from the general misunderstanding of the drivers of obesity and the perception that is only about a failure of personal responsibility. There are many drivers of obesity, including strong social, biological, and environmental factors which are outside of people's controls. People, of course, have a personal responsibility for their own health and well-being, but we need to recognize that many of the most powerful drivers of obesity lie outside personal control. We all have a part to play in reducing the personal and societal burden of obesity. Weight stigma and bias is harmful. Obesity stigma is associated with considerable physical and mental health consequences, including increased depression and anxiety, disordered eating and eating disorders, and decreased self-esteem. Weight stigma can make it harder for a person to manage their weight as it leads to unhealthy eating practices and avoidance of physical activity. A person with obesity may avoid healthcare appointments for fear of judgment. It can also lead to a lower quality of care for patients with obesity, ultimately leading to poorer health outcomes and increasing risks of mortality. Weight bias is also associated with inequities in... Really? I didn't even know that. Weight bias is also associated with inequities in employment and education. So, what's the initial knee-jerk reaction to reading this here? For myself, so if we were to jump into the drama triangle, the first thing that I think of here is coming from the persecutor place. So inside of the drama triangle, you've got three poles. Triangle, obviously. You've got the hero, which is the enabler. You've got the persecutor, which basically just like blames everyone. And then you've got the victim who just feels victimized by fucking everything. The hero tries to save the victim. The hero goes against the perpetrator and tells them to leave them alone and so on and so forth. White knight syndrome, that sort of thing. And the perpetrator absolutely hates the victim and absolutely hates the hero because they enable it and they just antagonize everyone. So when you're in the drama triangle, it's really hard to step out, but the way to step out is to try and just take a breath, step back and observe what the actual as objective truth as possible. So when it comes to this here, my first thing, I jump to the persecutor. I'm like, fuck you, stop being so fucking lazy. Yes, it's hard to go to the gym. Yes, it's hard to be overweight. Yes, the doctor's probably gonna say, stop being so fat, change your food, stop eating so much, go for a walk, be more active, get better sleep. Like, they're the presuppositions that everyone thinks of when it comes to being overweight, being obese. However, yeah, it's also the problems that happen outside. What if care is really hard for you to get because you've gotten to that point where you're so obese that you've now got no cartilage left in your knees and walking is insanely painful, so you have to jump around on one of those scooters? What then? What are you meant to do for exercise then? What are you meant to do if you want to join the gym to be able to lose that weight, but you don't have any availability to jump on any of the equipment that's going to allow you to lose the said weight? You're going to be stuck on your little scooter or in your wheelchair, or eventually, God forbid, you're going to be stuck in bed being morbidly obese like those people that are on TV that have to get forklifted or craned out of their house. That's what happens. Once you hit that slippery slope and you've polarized yourself way too far one side, maybe you've had a bad experience, you've gone to the gym, you fell off the treadmill, you got laughed at, or you felt really embarrassed from happening, what's gonna happen then? You're gonna jump home, probably self-soothe with some food, because I know something similar would happen to me. It's both sides of the equation. Yes, you need to fucking stop being a fat shit and stop shoving food into your face. This is me talking to myself here. But at the same time, you need to be able to make sure that you have the availability where people don't judge and mock you because of your size, because of what's going on. There's other mental health things that are going on. What happens if unconsciously, and I'm just saying here, what happens if unconsciously there's an event that happens in your life that triggers you so much. You've been abused, you've been raped, something like that has happened, and it's thrown your thyroid out, so your thyroid hormone absolutely collapses, and you stack on 50 kilos to protect yourself so that you don't get abused anymore. What about that? What about on the opposite side, getting shredded? What if you have a disordered eating so that you getting abused, getting raped, or whatever it is, and then you stop eating and you become bulimic and you start purging, you become anorexic, and you go the other end, you become really, really skinny so that you don't get touched again, so you don't get abused again. What then? Is that a pick yourself up by your bootstraps sort of scenario, or is that an external stimulus that needs to come in and to be able to fix that? Psychologists, psychiatrists, and the whole mental health counseling professionals. It's both. You can't do one or the other. It has to be both, and it can't be up to the people that say, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, get off your ass, stop being a fat shit. They're helpful. They're absolutely helpful because they want the best for you. They don't want the burdens on society costing taxpayers money. But at the same time, there's a part of them that actually wants you to be healthy and well. When it comes to the other side, all the societal influences, they need to be able to do a better job to be able to help you stand up on your own 2 feet and become healthy. But the access to people like that is it's covered with so much red tape. It's covered with embarrassment, with all of the judgment that comes along with it. So as society, we need to do better. We need to understand, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, take responsibility, stop eating like a fat shit, go train, go move, do all these things right. But we have to have the ability to be able to get this side here, to be able to meet this side here. That's what the unification of Australia has to be. That's what the unification of the polarity of opposites inside of us all has to be as well. We need to be able to make this a great land by making great people inside of it. Okay, but it's fucking true. We need to make sure that we unite Australia to make Australian great. Oh my God. Someone don't clip that, please. We need to make Australia an amazing place because of the people that's inside of it. We are a beautiful multicultural nation that has so many different backgrounds, so many different cultures. And we need to do our best to be able to make sure that Australians can be awesome. So that Australians aren't, 2/3 of us aren't overweight, that we're not obese, so that we have a great fulfilling life with access to healthcare, access to food, access to gyms, access to all these amazing things. It's up to us. And producing content like this, giving out free resources. By the way, if you need something to be able to help you, whether it's mental health or diet or anything like that, please DM me. Send me an email, dave@r.movement.com.au. I just realized that I'm starting to sweat like a hell of a lot because the aircon's actually just turned off and I didn't realize it until now. We're gonna push through, so if I start turning into a sweaty mess, you know exactly what's going on. Ooh, this is a good map. This is a really good map. So this is what's driving obesity. So there are strong social, genetic, biological, historic, and environmental influences on obesity. The rise of obesity prevalence over the last 30 years is mainly biological response to modern environments that promote unhealthier food, stress, physical activity, and weight gain. Many people in Australia live in environments where energy-rich foods are abundant and easy to access, and not every Australian lives in conditions where they're able to safely exercise. It's exactly what I was just talking about. The modern world that we have built with Uber Eats, fast food, social media, all these different things is creating such a fucking rift in those less fortunate, the lower socioeconomic people. It's easier and cheaper to feed your family with a dinner box from Macca's for $30 or whatever it is these days, which has, I think it's about 6,000 calories, 8,000 calories somewhere inside of that, where you give each person of the family of 4, they get a burger, chips, and a drink. That's going to work out to be, like 2,000 calories per person. Okay, if you've got that and that's the only thing you can afford because it's too hard to get good quality meat, it's too hard to get good quality vegetables, you go to Coles and they're price gouging everyone. They've made over $1.5 billion profit in the last financial year and they're absolutely ripping Australians off. What then? What are you supposed to do? What if you're on Centrelink because you've got disabilities or you got injuries or you're looking after dependents or whatever it is and you're only earning $1,000 a fortnight and your rent is $400 a week? What are you going to do then? That's why obesity is rising so much. That's why you look at the lower socioeconomic people around, they can't afford gyms. They can't afford to go shopping at good places. Like you go to like Flannery's or you go to Harris Food Markets or you go to any of like the fruit and veg markets and stuff like that that happen on the weekend. God forbid buying organic, but God forbid buying anything that's pesticide free. They can't fucking afford it. They can't afford to live a good life. So the luxuries that we have are in the lower middle to the upper middle class. Actually, it's probably not even the lower middle class anymore, but from the middle class to the upper middle class, you can afford to live well. You can afford to eat good quality meat, eat good quality vegetables and fruits. You can go buy things, you can go out to a steak dinner like I did last night. You can do so many things more because you can afford that little bit extra. The people that are on $30,000 a year, $40,000 a year less after tax, they're suffering so bad, especially in this economic crisis that we're in right now. Things are so much easier just to go to your big fast food restaurants to be able to get the convenience to be able to feed your family. Imagine this, you're a mum or a dad and you've got a family of 3 underneath you, you've got 3 dependents and they're all saying that they're hungry, but you've only got $20 to last you for another 4 days until you get paid your Centrelink or until you get your wage. What are you gonna do then? You're gonna go try and get the best bang for buck. You're gonna go to Coles, grab sausages that are 50% protein, 50% fats. There's going to be maybe a loaf of bread in there, and that's gonna be 2 days worth of dinner. Maybe you can stretch the $20 to get something else and last a little bit longer. Maybe you tell your kids a bit of a lie and say that fasting's a really healthy thing and we're gonna do this challenge because we wanna make sure that we're maintaining health. I knew one of my friends that I went and did all my study with, that was her childhood. They couldn't eat 3 nights of the week because they were so poor growing up. So when you say from one side of politics that say, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, it's up to the individual, personal responsibility. No, society is failing them because we shouldn't have giant gaping holes for people like this to fall through. There should be things to be able to make sure that whether it's through tax refunds, through the ATO, through Centrelink, through doctors' surgeries, or whatever it is, that we're making sure that people are getting adequate nutrition, that, we should be making sure that on Medicare, that blood tests are bulk billed, regardless of what we're looking for, regardless if we're looking for hormones or we're looking for vitamins and minerals or whatever. Everything should be looked after because that's the society that we live in, because we give the government so much damn money through our taxes. So when it comes into this, let's have a look at this picture here. Okay, so we've got food production. Food has become fake. You look at what Monsanto is doing with their seeds, and when it comes to the farmers that use the seeds so that they can use Roundup, because if you use Monsanto seeds, they're genetically modified enough so that the Roundup that they use on it with the glyphosates don't kill the crops that are used from the Monsanto seeds. Can you see how that's a big bit of fuckery right there? What about the things that we're feeding our cattle? What about the things that we're feeding our pigs? Are they grain-fed, grass-fed, corn-fed? Like, how are they being fed? The food production that we've gotten, because we've got so many people, so many farmers that are getting fucked over by the big retailers, they've got crops that are just absolutely going to waste. What about all of have you seen the fruit and veg that's going to rot on people's farms at the moment in February 2024? It's because Coles and Woolies are rejecting anything that's not perfect. So they've got all these tons and tons and tons of fruit and veg that could go to the less fortunate, that could be donated from Coles' big hearts because they're all about giving back apparently. But no, that's why we've got so much of a discrepancy when it comes to infrastructure. We've got industry, we've got profiteering, we've got all these different problems with late stage capitalism that are fucking over lower socioeconomic people. Even the middle class is suffering. Even the people that are like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, they're the ones that are suffering as well. They're all suffering thanks to corporate greed. And I'm not blaming capitalism. I'm blaming this entire fucking thing here. This is what modern life is about. All of these things, this map here, relates to one another. So societal influences. We've got individual psychology. What happens if you're abused? What happens if you've got a little victim mindset going on? You don't know how to fix it because you've got a closed mindset. What about your individual activity? What if you've got injuries? What about your food consumption because of the food production? What about your biology? What about the epigenetics that turn on or off depending on your mood, depending on how well your food is, how well you're psychologically needed, how well your community, what your safety and security needs are, whether you've got a shelter over your head that you can actually afford to pay. All of these things go into it. It's not one or the other. So I'm going to polarize this and say deliberately, I fucking hate the body positivity movement when it comes to glorifying the obese. You're not fucking healthy. You might have healthy blood markers, but tell me psychologically that you're okay. Tell me psychologically that you're having a fulfilled life, that when people look at you and they bicker behind your back and they judge you, that it doesn't affect you. If you are one of these people that can safely stand up and say that, it doesn't affect me, I take my hat off to you because I know what it's like to get judged. I know what it's like to have shit talked about behind my back. I couldn't handle it. Absolutely, I could not handle it. thankfully, that level of bullying, I was able to be able to reframe in my head and say, all right, I've got to get this shit under control because I'm sick of being fat. I'm so sick of being obese. It's horrible. I've gotten way too worked up over this podcast because it's a massive problem. And being a PT over the last 12 years, having family members that are obese, disordered eating, disordered thinking, disordered emotions, I can't deal with this anymore. Like, I need to go calm myself down because I've gotten very polarized on this podcast. So I take my hat off to anyone that's obese. It sucks. But at the same time, we're going to revisit this on the opposite side because I've been so pro helping fat, obese people. That's going to sound terrible. Anyway, helping overweight, obese people, we're going to go down the disordered thinking, the disordered eating, the disordered psychology that goes into the opposite side when it comes to fit influencers and people that are always shredded and taking heaps of drugs to be able to stay that down, deliberately starving themselves and all that sort of thing. It's a massive problem. That one's probably not going to be as bad as this one is, but there's a lot of information that we needed to get through today. So I'm going to go have a cold shower because I'm sweating like a pig. If I've triggered you, if I've done anything that's offended you or anything like that, just know that it came from a place of love, and I really, really want you to do the best that you can. So if you're overweight, obese, you've got a family with it, don't be a little victim, do something about it, reach out to me if you need to, but make sure you take responsibility because there's so many things out there in the infrastructure, through doctors and government and all these sorts of things, all these initiatives that billions of dollars has been spent over the last 10 odd years to curb this obesity epidemic. There's a lot that's available for you if you were to actually put your hand up and say, hey, I need some help. Be brave, be courageous to say, hey, look, I'm overweight, I'm obese, I need some help with this because I can't do it by myself anymore. And if I need to be the one to be able to help you out, fantastic. Please reach out, please do so. Like I said, dave@r.y.se or just send me a DM, leave me a comment, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Have an amazing week, everyone. Much love, take care, and I'll see you again soon. Thank you for being with me today. Thank you for subscribing and leaving a review. It really helps us out. Until next time, take care and much love.